Hello, I'm Chris Williams from Read Comics, They're Bad For You, or if you're watching this on my BitChute account, Comic Freak. Today we're going to be reviewing Swampthing, 2019, Episode 2. We start off with Swampthing. From the last episode, he's been crawling around in the swamp, trying to get used to the fact, or rather, basically traumatized by the fact that he's now basically an inhuman monster. He's not quite sure what he is. Alec only knows that he's not human anymore. He remembers being shot, and then he remembers falling into the water and nearly drowning in the muck, in the slime and the water of the swamp. And he wakes up, he finds that he's not human anymore. He at first basically runs, and he ends up tearing parts of his body off as he does so when he stops and looks at himself. He basically causes enough damage that it causes him to fall unconscious. Meanwhile, the daughter of the man who was turned into a planned abomination in the last episode appears to have developed a psychic link with Alec Holland, or Swampthing as he is now, and she basically experiences the moments where he's tearing off parts of his body. She experiences those moments as he's doing it, and she herself falls unconscious from the trauma. Well, either way, both the Swampthing, Alec Holland, and the girl fall unconscious, and we switch over to Avery Sunderland in his mansion. He wakes up to find that his wife is gone. He goes over to his daughter's room, his deceased daughter's room, to see that his wife is sleeping there. She wants to remember her daughter when she was alive, so she's been sneaking out of their bed, or off their bed, and into her daughter's room and sleeping there. He asks her why she keeps torturing herself like this, and she responds like she just wants to feel her daughter again, something from her daughter. Later on, Abby Arcane goes to see Avery Sunderland, and they talk about what's going on, about how Alec has disappeared, and how Avery is basically hindering Abby's search for both the truth of what happened to Alec Holland as well as the CDC's investigation of the disease that is killing people in the town of Maris, Louisiana. Even though he says that he loves her as a daughter, you kind of see, he doesn't even hold anything against her like his wife does. He just kind of sees her as something to be used to help his business and to give him more power. His wife, though, Maria Sunderland, played by Virginia Madsen, she's been having visions of their dead daughter, and she goes off to see a fortune teller off in the town, and the fortune teller says that she shouldn't be digging up such old things that have been long buried and put behind them, because it'll just bring nothing but pain. Well, Maria convinces the fortune teller to do another reading for her. And what happens is the fortune teller ends up contacting her dead daughter. And she screams. And she says there's something bad growing in the rot of the water of the swamp. And you should not be messing with it. And what you're doing is somehow aggravating it. Her husband, Avery, is off talking to various people like Jason Woodrow and his wife, Miss Woodrow. See, Avery is wondering why Woodrow's plant accelerant isn't doing what he wanted it to do. It's not accelerating the plants. It's more like it's causing them to go nuts, as well as causing various diseases to become more pronounced in the townspeople. He's wondering why something that should basically allowing him to gain more money through either the accelerant converting more of the water and swampy areas of the swamp into fertile land for development, as well as more wood and more plants that they can harvest to make drugs and to make more food with. No, instead it's causing people to get sick, as well as causing various things like the plants going nuts, as well as people just basically turning and basically being consumed by plants instead of people eating the plants. Woodrue says to him his plant accelerant is working perfectly, and that this strange phenomenon has nothing to do with his accelerant. Meanwhile, Abby Arcane is looking for information about Alec Holland, and she goes over to see Daniel Cassidy, being played by Ian Ziering. He's a former actor who used to play on a show or a movie called The Blue Devil, and he's been living in Maris, Louisiana for the last 8 years. Well, she goes over to see him because apparently Alec Holland had been renting a room in his video store. He'd been living there, apparently, when he was not in the lab in the swamp. Well, Abby goes over and she asks if he can use his computer to see if he left anything behind. He says that Avery Sunderland's men came by and swept everything that would probably be important to her and her investigation. Well, he lets her into the computer, and she finds that Alec Holland had left a few messages on there for himself. He'd been talking about how he'd met a woman named Abby Arcane, and that he had been really saying that she was nice and that she was intelligent, and she could really help him on this investigation to see what is happening in the swamp. He also goes into about how the accelerant is interacting with the swamp water, creating these vast growths of plants and diseases that he's never seen before, saying that it's not just an accelerant, that it seems to be mutating the natural plant life of the swamp. Now, he goes on to say that he's going to be checking these little boxes he's been leaving out in the swamp to monitor the situation, and taking samples from the swamp. And he mentions that he's going to go to this one area, which happens to be the area he visited when he was shot. And she realizes where he had been. This message had been just made prior to him disappearing. Later on, the girl who was in the hospital, who has a psychic link with the Swampthing, has snuck out of the hospital, and she snuck onto a boat on one of the deputies' routine patrols of the swamp. She hides herself on the boat, and the deputy goes out on his patrol, and he ends up seeing a couple of men dumping stuff into the swamp. He goes over and he investigates what happens. One of the men is an old friend of his, and he asks him what they're doing. He says, up to no good again. While his friend's accomplice ends up taking a hook and killing the deputy with it. Now, the deputy's friend is horrified at what his accomplice has just done. Now, the murderer, the cop killer really now, tells the other man to get out of there. He'll handle getting rid of the body and the evidence. And as he does that and manages to get rid of the hook he just used to kill the deputy with, he hears a splash and the sound of running feet, and he realizes he has another witness to deal with. And he goes after the girl. He manages to corner her in a deserted old house, and he is about ready to kill her when Swampthing busts in with it. As I've said before, he has a mental link with the girl, and the man, horrified at what he's just seen, this creature before him, takes a knife and starts slashing at Swampthing. All this does is causes Swampthing to go nuts. I guess frightened or just angry, and Swampthing summons a bunch of vines to kill the man. And this is where the episode ends, with Abby Arcane coming in a few minutes later, finding the girl, but also finding Alec Holland, or whether this thing before her. She tells the girl to come with her, and she does. And all Alec Holland can do is look on longingly as Abby Arcane takes the girl out of the swamp. The girl says to Abby that the creature was talking to her, and that he said his name was Alec. And Abby just realized that this thing, this green, horrible, red-eyed thing, that's Alec Holland. And she realizes that she might have just made a terrible mistake. Or, well, she's probably too stunned at what she just saw as this visibly inhuman creature just basically was talking with a little girl and just standing on a dock. And this is how the episode ends. It's a good episode, and I'd say this series is well worth a watch. Now, if you like this review, subscribe. Make sure you're still subscribed. If you're watching my videos but you're not subscribed, please subscribe to me and hit that bell. And also, if you're watching this on BitChute, subscribe to me there on my BitChute channel, Comic Freak. And remember to hit that like button and leave some comments down below. And also, keep checking back in future videos for more information on my own upcoming independent comic book, Scumdogs. I'll be back again tomorrow with another video or review.